First, I want to apologize, because English isn't my native language, so maybe my writing might seem a little bit odd. So, when I was in high school, I wasn't a very hardworking student. I wasn't a troublemaker, but I was an incredibly lazy girl, working just the minimum so that my parents wouldn't get angry. I've always had some kind of easiness regarding schoolwork, and never knew what it truly meant to make any effort. So I spent all my classes drawing on my copybooks, without many consequences. My junior year's math teacher, who was seen by everyone as uptight but very caring, was pretty upset about this, as were many of my previous teachers. He wanted me to work harder. I wasn't bad at math. I was around 13 or 14 out of 20. I'm French, but I assume that's like having a B or B minus. But sometimes my grades would be very low. During a parent-teacher meeting, he told my mom that I was wasting my capabilities, that it was infuriating how lazy I was. My mom then replied that she agreed with him and that she wouldn't blame him for pushing me harder and punishing me if it was making me work harder. And from that day on, he did exactly what she said. In every math class, he would always question me first before everyone else, was always sitting next to me when we were doing exercises. During the test, he was always telling me, "You can do it, Eliza." It made me feel incredibly uncomfortable, because at this age, no one wants to be the attention's focus. My classmates started to realize that my math teacher was a little obsessed with me, and was teasing me a lot about this. The last class before Christmas break, the math teacher threw a little surprise Christmas party. It was very nice. He gave us chocolates and mock champagne. We had a lot of fun. During the party, he poured me another glass of mock champagne, telling me that I deserved it because I was doing better. And it was true. Because of all of that attention, I was forced to work, so my grades were around 15 or 16 out of 20, which is like having an A or A minus. I accepted it, but I didn't drink it entirely. I have diabetes and already had had too much chocolate. But during the next class, I was feeling very bad. I almost fainted, and finished my last day of school before Christmas in the nurse's office. At that time, I wouldn't even think it was because of the alcohol-free champagne. I thought it was due to my diabetes, that I indeed had had too much chocolate, even though it didn't look like my usual crisis. A few weeks later, my class threw some kind of charity event. It was a class project, and we were very proud of it. In my country, we don't have proms, so it was our occasion to wear pretty formal clothing and dance together. The math teacher was invited, and he was helping some of the boys to tend to the bar. He served me an alcohol-free cocktail, but before I could drink it, a classmate of mine, Flora, poured some vodka in it, even though it was forbidden to bring alcohol to a school event. I was mad because of my diabetes. I couldn't drink alcohol, so I told her that she could just throw the cocktail away. At the time, I thought she did, but now that I think about it, I wonder if she chose to drink it instead. The event ended pretty badly because of the alcohol that Flora had bought. Some guys were very drunk and started breaking things, and Flora passed out because of all the alcohol she had consumed. This ended the event, and Flora had been admitted to the hospital because of her coma, which was pretty severe, and we spent the next day being lectured by all the teachers at the school. Flora got expelled from the school and never went again. I was very upset at her because of her every event would now be forbidden, and our project was a failure. We gave a very bad image to the association we were raising funds for, so I kind of ghosted her and never asked how she was doing. I now feel bad about this, but at the time I was immature. But because of that, I will never know if she was ill because of the alcohol, or because of my cocktail. A few weeks later, I failed a math test. It had been a long time since I'd failed a math test, and the math teacher was very angry. He yelled at me in front of everyone, saying how much of a disappointment I was, that I was hopeless, and that I would end up living in a cardboard box under a bridge. Something was off, and I was feeling it. He had a very weird look in his eye, and it chilled me to the bone. I couldn't help it. I started crying. He calmed down a bit, and said he would just give me an hour of detention, during which I will copy my lesson. I was a little surprised because normally detention's for bad behavior, not bad grades. But I was a little relieved because it was a small punishment. My parents would never know. Indeed, I lived kind of far from my high school, and there was only one bus every night between my high school and my home at 5 p.m. Because of that, even when I finished at 4 p.m., I would never go home before 5 p.m. And when I had detention between 4 and 5, my parents would never know. But then he officially gave me the detention hour, and he said he wanted to be personally present during my detention, and that the only possible hour was during 5 and 6. I was really nervous, because I would have to tell my parents to come get me at 6 p.m., and they would know everything. As I said earlier, I wasn't a troublemaker, so at first I planned to go to the detention, but during the day, my friends and I talked a lot about it, and I was feeling more rebellious, because of the sensation of being supported by my friends. So I decided not to tell my parents that I was in detention, and that one of my friends would pick me up at 6 p.m. and drive me home. At 5 p.m., when headed towards the detention room, I was angry, mumbling that it wasn't fair to be in detention because of one and only one bad grade. When I arrived in front of the detention room, I realized I was the only one waiting. I then realized I would be the only student in detention, alone with the math teacher who was a little obsessive, and it was getting dark outside. It was during the late winter months, early spring, so the night was early. That was a big nope for me, and when I saw him coming, I panicked. I said something like, "Sorry, I have an emergency and I have to go now. I will email the school for rescheduling my detention hour," and I ran off. He started to yell at me that I had to obey him and go to detention, and that he would call my parents. At this moment, I didn't care. I sprinted toward the bus stop and caught my bus, and went home. I was afraid he would have called my parents, so when I arrived I was shaking, but my parents greeted me normally, so I assumed that eventually he didn't call them. He never came back the next day, nor in the next few weeks. I eventually learned that he quit his position. A shrink came during that hour to ask if we wanted to talk about the math teacher, but as nobody knew what was going on with him, we didn't have much to say, and the shrink left, and we never heard from him again. Until a few months ago. I became a teacher, how ironic given my laziness when I was a teen, and one day while chatting with my coworker, I mentioned his name, talking about my weird, bizarre math teacher, and how I skipped a detention hour, and one of my oldest coworkers went very pale hearing his name. In fact, a few days after the detention hour incident, my math teacher was arrested for having downloaded a few pedopornographic videos from the dark web, and some kind of snuff movies starring children and young teens. Maybe this detention hour was just a detention hour, and I would have gone without having any problem. But now I will never know, and always wonder what would have happened if I'd stayed there and didn't catch my bus. Hey all, I'm pretty new to Reddit, so forgive me if there's a more appropriate subreddit for this story. I've been listening to r/compilations on YouTube while drawing lately. One just came up about stalkers, and it pushed me over the edge to write out one of the few stories I've been thinking about sharing here for a while now. First off, the story happened almost 10 years ago. I'll jump right in because it's long. I got home from work one day and logged onto Facebook to find a message from someone I didn't know. It was too long ago to remember verbatim what was said, but it was along the lines of, "Hey Lot Lizard, I know you have no idea who I am, but I've been trying to decide what to do for a few days, and figured I had to let you know what has been going on. Someone's been catfishing me using your identity for over 2 years, and I just found out about it last week." The sender of the email was clearly pretty shaken up, and understandably was experiencing a mix of emotions. According to her, she had met the imposter online a little over 2 years prior to her writing this, and they had been engaged in a pretty intimate long-distance relationship for a majority of the time. This imposter had created a Facebook and had over time reposted almost all of my photos with their own captions to them, including a good amount of art I'd drawn that they took credit for. They created fake profiles for a good amount of my close family and friends, so they could comment on the photos of themselves to make the profile seem legit. The funniest part to me is that although most things in my real life seemed to be mirrored in this fake profile, I, a straight male, was instead portrayed as trans. I think the main reason for this was that the sender of the email and the imposter would actually speak on the phone, and the imposter turned out to be female in the end, and therefore needed a reason to justify her more feminine-sounding voice. The sender of the email was justifiably both angry and creeped out, and wanted to find the catfish. She started asking me a lot of questions about my life, but phrasing them like, "Is your sister's name blank, and did you go to blank high school?" Some of them were clearly information that anyone could glean from a quick browse of my profile. But then she asked, "Is your best friend blank?" Which struck me as odd, since, despite this person actually being my closest friend, and who I spent the most time with, we have barely any Facebook photos together, and most are from a long time ago. Then she asked, "Were you adopted, and are your half-siblings blank and blank?" Which sealed the deal for me, since I knew for a fact I'd never posted about being adopted online. The sender of the email already had an idea that this person had known me in real life, but this confirmed it for me. The sender of the email had contacted me shortly after confronting the imposter for the first time. I guess after 2 years, they'd finally become suspicious of the fact that the imposter wouldn't show their face. I have no idea how it took this long for them to figure out that they were being played, but I'm glad they finally decided to give the ultimatum of, "Show your face or I'm cutting you off." I'm pretty sure this is the point where the imposter admitted to being a catfish and that she'd been using the identity of someone she had a crush on in high school before hanging up. I was given the URL so I could look through the profile myself, which was up for about 2 days after I saw it before it was all removed. It was definitely really bizarre. The imposter had posted more than I had ever on Facebook, and it genuinely seemed like they'd lived a pretty involved double life online as me. Almost everyone I'd posted photos of with my real profile would then have their own fake profiles created that had enough content to be genuinely convincing, so they could be tagged in and validate those new photos. Some of these photos seemed to have gone and made their own real friends as well, and I wonder if any of those were used to facilitate any more online dating deception. Either way, the amount of time that this person had spent fabricating their alter ego online presence was pretty shocking. The whole time I'd been crawling down this Facebook rabbit hole, the sender of the email was looking through my real profile. After a while, she sent me a message saying, "Did you take these photographs?" and showed me what I remember as a black and white photo of a barn or something. I hadn't, which is weird since everything else on the fake profile originated with me, and she'd noticed the discrepancy. We both tried reverse image searching with no luck. Then, either through a stroke of genius, or somewhat suspiciously, I really couldn't tell, she thought to flip the fake number imposter had written into a fake Facebook profile around in reverse, and Google search came up with a landline that belonged to the home address of a girl that I'd gone to high school with. Real me was Facebook friends with the real imposter's profile, so we both went snooping around and found the photo that she claimed I'd taken, which pretty much confirmed to me that this was the imposter. I'm pretty sure there were more indicators to the sender as well, but I can't remember. I thought about messaging her for a while, but decided it probably wouldn't lead to anything good. At the time, my thoughts were definitely, let's not meet. I talked a few times with the sender of the email, just to try to decompress a bit, but honestly, I just wanted to distance myself from the situation. And also, I had my suspicion about the sender as well. I figured maybe it was the imposter's one last-ditch effort to try to talk to me. Although when it was all over, the sender seemed to be eager to leave all this behind as well, so maybe not. Either way, it was a really strange experience. I felt mostly freaked out and violated, but I guess there was a small part of me that was flattered by it. I had a lot of mixed emotions. The weirdest part of me is that I'm a really approachable person, and would have definitely been willing to talk and probably be friends if this person had just approached me instead. Although I'm still not sure if this was done out of an obsession for me, or if this person felt like I was just a suitable image to base this fabricated persona off of. I remember talking to her probably twice throughout high school, and really didn't have a very good idea of who she was, other than a quiet hipster girl. If either person involved read this, I definitely would be happy to talk now. It's been years. I've gone from being very put off about it, to always wondering why this person chose me, over a myriad of other attractive or more interesting people online to base their other life off of. According to the sender who contacted me, She probably spent more time online pretending to be me than she actually did going on about her own life. I have a tumultuous history of addiction and have had plenty of my own escapes, which is why it always fascinated me that someone would want to pretend to live someone else's life as a means of doing that. Because at the end of the day, the person pretending to be me had no idea that I spent my day daydreaming about being a different person as well. I guess it just goes to show that no matter how much you wish you were someone else, chances are that person has plenty of their own reasons to want to escape their own demons for their own reasons. Thanks for reading.